We're on Radio Row here at the Super Bowl. That is Bryan Curtis with me now here on The Hoffman Show, the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. That's why we have the fancy video set up, Bryan.
Look at this.
I actually wanted to ask you. So, Bryan, if you haven't heard him on the show before, you haven't read his work, you're missing out. Great writer for The Ringer, covers all things media. You wrote a great piece on Tony Romo that we're going to talk about in a second. But I remember, I think it was the first year that we actually met at one of these. I'd had you on the show before. We finally got to meet in person, and kind of you were covering the zoo. You were like, I'm one of the animals covering the zoo. This is my first one since Miami, which was pre-pandemic. And the first thing you said to me is, this is nuts. Like, this feels pre-pandemic. I think, what do you make of the kind of the re-evolution of Radio Row, and also the fact that everybody's doing this? Everyone's doing the video stuff now.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, we've had this kind of marriage of sports radio, television, gambling.
Yes.
And I think all those things have made this not only bigger, but fancier, more technologically interesting, right? So that everybody's kind of on TV at the same time, and everybody's doing a podcast, and everybody's doing radio, and it's cool, and it feels really lively here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, like, from our side of it, is like it almost is different audiences. Like, there is a Venn diagram of people that will do what ideally, if we're being transparent with the audience, what we would like, which is you listen to me because you're a DC person driving home in the car. When you get home, you flip me on YouTube, and maybe you can't watch on TV, so you go somewhere else and you flip on the app and like you catch a bunch of the show, or if you miss it, you get the podcast. But it really, like you said, it is all of these things simultaneously happening at once, and the lines between them all just, I don't even know if they're blurred or just not existent.
And I've seen so many bits here.
Like, I'm trying to do a bit-free week, honestly.
You are?
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because Carrot Top is here.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is Vegas, and this is Carrot Top's town.
Yes, of course.
But you don't even need to be a prop comic, it turns out, in sports radio to do bits. Like, everybody's walking around with cameras. Everybody's, look at me. I'm in a casino. This is crazy.
Right. It's like, yeah, we get it. You're in Vegas. I actually, like, there were some bits that I was thinking about doing. I was like, you want to know what? Everyone's going to be doing bits.
A lot of bits.
And if we stumble upon a good one, look, we're still a sports radio show at the end of the day. We're going to do it.
You're shameless enough.
Yeah,
There's the right bit.
Let's be honest. We know the medium. But I'm not going into the week with any planned bits. So there's, for better or for worse, we're going to see how that goes. All right. So you wrote about Romo for The Ringer. He is such a polarizing figure at this point, although I do feel like his approval rating is dropping dramatically from the universal love of him when he started. Like, what do you make of what is, like, has he changed or have we changed? I guess is where I'd start.
So it's a great question. This is where I start with him, Craig. It's almost like he is one of those NFL quarterbacks who shows so much potential, so many traits, as we like to say, so many good things, but then also makes so many big mistakes. So the thing is not that he is elite, as we like to say about quarterbacks, or terrible. He is sort of both of those things at the same time, sometimes in the same broadcast. And that, to me, is the real puzzle of him, because it's not like he's a bad announcer. He's a number one announcer. I firmly believe that. Even when I'm throwing things at the TV, he is a number one guy in the NFL. But I look at some stuff he does, and I'm just like, dude, you're 7 years on television, and you're still doing these little things, which we can get into if you want to.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, let's get into it. What are the little things?
So my big complaint about Tony Romo is loves quarterbacks, loves wide receivers, loves a defensive back once in a while. He doesn't care about anybody else on the field. I mean, just doesn't care. If you watch, it was a play in the AFC Championship game where he was like, look at this, Isaiah Pacheco sprung by a pulling guard. He didn't ever name the guard. He doesn't even say his name. Later he would say, you know, those Ravens tackles, they're the best in the game. Doesn't know who they are or doesn't say their name. And it's like this just lack of curiosity about everything in the NFL except quarterback play, scheme, eye in the sky. I'm going to draw you a picture with my telestrator. It's really, really weird, I find.
That is very interesting. I had not necessarily noticed that. Bryan Curtis from The Ringer.
Bryan Ringer.
I mean,
friends call me.
You've been there a while, man.
I have.
You never know.
At this point,
I don't know what Simmons
changed my name. I like Ocho Cinco.
Yeah, whatever, Simmons, whatever you want, man. Bryan Curtis from The Ringer with us here on The Hoffman Show on Radio Row. I think where a lot of people go sideways with Romo is the just over-exuberance for everything.
Oh, Jim!
Yeah, and it's kind of just, hey, man, like, let it breathe. And I also wonder, especially as a contrast to Olsen, who's so authoritative. It almost feels like a kid who can't believe he's there versus Olsen who's like, I am here, I belong. How much do you think that maybe the comparison with Olsen or like the other alternatives of some of the top guys maybe highlight that thing in Romo that a lot of people don't seem to like anymore?
I think it's especially true with Olsen because Olsen will give you 90% of that Romo enthusiasm. Like Olsen feels like I am ready to call this game at Fox. I'm excited.
He loves to be there.
This is awesome. But moment by moment, I'm in control.
Mm-hmm.
I have command of the game. I'm not going to see a play that's so great that I just lose my mind and start screaming, right? I'm going to be like, here's what happened. Let's lock down. Let's do this. And then let's get excited. So, yeah, I think we found like Romo 2.0 or the T-1000 if you want to go back to the Terminator movies. We found the more technologically advanced Romo, and it is Greg Olsen.
Do you think that, like, is Romo long for this? Or is he going to have all these people ripping him apart and just be like, I don't need to do this. I've made so much money.
So that's a fascinating question. There's 17.5 million reasons a year that he is long for this game. But, you know, I grew up a Cowboys fan,
yes.
or am still a Cowboys fan. I never got the sense that Tony Romo cared all that much about what people thought.
Which is a survival mechanism when you were him as the Cowboys quarterback.
As the Cowboys quarterback. But even then, just like, you know, people would say, like, he's just not as locked into being a quarterback. So there's the, like, I don't care what the haters say part of it. But there's also the just, you know what? This isn't my life in the way that it's Peyton Manning's life when he was playing in the NFL or Tom Brady's life. I just am kind of, I care about my job. I wouldn't say that about him, but I just don't get the sense that it like hurts Tony Romo's soul if he gets bad reviews. And then I would say the same thing about Tony the quarterback. It's weird how they're similar characters.
Yeah.
You know, with Chris Collinsworth, it seems like if somebody were like, Chris didn't do his homework today, that would just kill Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah.
Like he would just be like, I did my homework.
Yeah.
Trust me, I did it. With Tony, if you say that, I think he would be like, oh, no, I did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Tony. By the way, total left turn, but you will enjoy this. I was watching a tennis tournament. It was the Cincinnati Open over the summer, and I'd forgotten that Chris Collinsworth is like Mr. Cincinnati. Every other commercial was like a Collinsworth bit. So if you ever want some fun Chris Collins, if you ever write a Collinsworth story.
Is he doing like local Mexican restaurants?
Well, it's more of like, I think there was like this air conditioning company that was Cincinnati based, and so they were a big sponsor of the tournament. And it was like him and Jack and like their daughter, and like it was like a whole it was like a whole Collinsworth family thing.
You're getting story ideas here. This is incredible.
As I'm watching Alcaraz and Djokovic murder each other, and Coco Gauff have her summer of Coco. Anyway, that was on the Tennis Channel in July. We're now on Radio Row in February here in Las Vegas. That's Bryan Curtis from The Ringer. The other big thing that I want to talk to you about real quick in kind of the sports media world, this new super streaming service thing from Fox and Warner Brothers and ESPN. What do we know so far?
It's really interesting. So we know that the three companies you just mentioned,
yes,
and all the networks that are underneath there, so ESPN, right, ESPN2, and everything else, SEC Network, you're going to be able to get them as one streaming package. We also know from CNBC that this is going to cost somewhere between $45 and $50 a month. So the question to me about this new super streamer thing is, who is this for?
Right.
I think a lot of us have YouTube TV, which is like $70, $80 a month. So right. So what we're going to do is, for $20 cheaper, you're going to get just the sports channels and then take off everything else from that package. It's a bundle, but it's not as big a bundle.
Right.
So this is one of these things about this age we live in. There's all these announcements, all these press releases, and I'm kind of like, are we just making press releases and we're trying to hope there's an audience for what we're selling here?
And if it is, we'll follow through on it?
Yeah.
It is bizarre because I do think that many of us have come to the realization that killing cable was a terrible idea, that it just was easier to have a reliable thing that worked and within one system if you want to switch back and forth between games. And if you're watching one on the ESPN app and one on Peacock, like you can't do that on your Apple TV quite as easily. But I also... I think it's more interesting. I'm going to play chess here.
We're not playing checkers anymore.
These companies have also all been in the mix with, for instance, the NFL to take over NFL Network, or some of these leagues to really cross the lines of media and sports. And I just think it's fascinating that even without that, they're willing to work together.
It is, and I think that's a bunch of people that are groping for a solution, right? They're just like, what are we going to do? And, ESPN is, I think, the biggest, just because they were the biggest bully on the block in the cable bundle.
Right.
Charging people $10-12 a month, everybody, no matter whether you watched ESPN or not. Now they're like, oh, we lost like 30 million of those subscribers over the last couple of years. That's a real number. And we got to figure out how we're going to pay for this network. And by the way, sports rights are going up.
Right.
We got the NFL, we got the Super Bowl. We're about to have the whole college football national championship playoff. There's just a lot of money there. And everybody's just like, we don't know how to pay for it, so here we go.
Right.
Here we go, as Tony Romo would say.
Yeah.
And let's figure it out.
Yeah, no, it is very bizarre. I will say one thing that I read, I don't know if you saw this as well, is like if you're already a subscriber to one of those other streaming platforms, so I guess currently for Warner Brothers it'd be Max / HBO Max, whatever Fox is offering, and then ESPN Plus, you would get access to this bundle.
I think you could add it on. You could bundle it with your other app.
Now I just feel like we're in a bad State Farm
We're just
commercial.
adding, and this is, again, like you said, cable was, I'm like you. I think forget streaming, forget everything. I want something where I can watch all the games.
Yeah.
Or I never have to be that guy on Twitter who's like, where's the game? I can't get the game. I want to watch everything. As a sports fan, this is a step toward that, but it's not everything.
Well, I think it's also fascinating, too, and talk about being off topic here as we're on NFL Media Row, but like I look at the NWSL's new media deal or the WNBA's, and I think some of the Division I college football conferences are doing this, too, where all of a sudden the rights are split.
Yes.
And it's like, I want to watch an SEC football game. Where is it? And I guess NFL fans have been dealing with that for years, but it's like, okay, we're Fox or CBS. We got it. But if your team, and it's also once a week and like whatever, but I do think it's interesting, like kind of the changing dynamics in that way too of literally where is the game, and I guess what they're betting on is people will pay for this thing so that they know where the game is.
Mm-hmm. And again, it gets you a parlay there, but it doesn't have CBS. It doesn't have your Prime games from Amazon. I mean, it's just a real, like I said, we get partway down the road here, but we still don't have something like the old cable bundle.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I think everybody wants, even if it's just for sports.
Yeah. So very interesting times in sports media. Bryan Curtis, one of my favorite guys to chop it up with. You could read his work in the Romo piece at theringer.com. Bryan, thank you, sir.
Always, Craig. Be good on Radio Row.
I'll do my best. The Jabberwockies just walked by. Did you see that?
Oh, man. We are in Vegas.
Showtime. Be back in just a moment.